delighted to welcome our guest today, Dr. Liz Miller. She was the first woman neurosurgeon in the UK. She is qualified both as a doctor and as a psychologist. She suffered from severe bipolar disorder. And after 10 long years of severe mental health issues, she overcame using her own invention of mood mapping, which is what she's going to tell us about today. She published her book, Mood Mapping, in 2009, which has received 5-star rating in Amazon. Mood mapping is notable for both its simplicity and its incredible effectiveness. So she is going to tell us about it right now. So let's welcome her with a round of applause, even though it's webinar.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome, Liz. Thank you so much.
Well, anyway, I was very pleased that you asked me to talk, and I felt very flattered, in fact.
Thank you.
So I'm very, very kind of you. I've not used this technology before, so anything might happen. And as Sabrina and Marina are explaining, I'm basically retired, a medical background. I'm now recently retired GP. I started off life as a neurosurgeon in the days when the neurosurgeons wandered around saying, there'll never be a woman in neurosurgery. And I was wandering around thinking, watch me. So spent about first 10 years of my career in neurosurgery and trauma. And that essentially is around that time that I got ill with bipolar disorder. And I had a pretty grim 10 years with it, in and out of psychiatric hospitals. And then it was finally that I realized it was probably my problem, not the rest of society picking on me. And it was accepting my mental health for what it was that was the beginning of my recovery. Because I think you've got to accept for who you are, whatever you are. That's who we are. And I got into self-management partly because I got involved with the bipolar organization, and they do a lot with self-management, and I help work on their courses. But the other thing that spurred me on was a psychiatrist who said, only I know how you feel, you don't know how you feel. So I thought, oh yes, and I didn't go back to his clinic. In terms of mental health, I was working with the bipolar organization. I set up the doctor support group for doctors with mental health problems. And we're talking mid-90s now, some time ago. But I went to see the president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and he just said, well, doctors don't have mental health problems. I think you'll find you're the only one. So, and it's now something like, 15 years later, and with the Doctor Support Network, 20 years later probably, and they've got a thriving membership of nearly 1,000. It's international, etc. Wow. So there's obviously a problem, some issue there. I was one of many stars in the Stephen Fry documentary Secret Life of the Manic Depressive. And for 3 days we did filming together. We were best friends for 3 days back in the 90s, in 2007. 2008 voted mine mental health champion, and then 2009 published my book Mood Mapping, which is really, over these years, what I'd actually learned was that you have to be responsible for your own mental health, and it's only you who can actually decide how you feel. Now, we have triggers, we have reflexes, we have all kinds of baggage that we carry around, but essentially we have to decide how we feel. And that can be very difficult, because it's like the psychiatrist who said to me, only I know how you feel. To a certain extent, particularly then and still now, people are not very good at knowing how they feel. We're very good at knowing how everybody else feels, and we can be nice to everybody else for the end of time, but we're not very good at being nice to ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the Doctor Support Network, the one thing we set it up for was to learn to be kinder to yourself and others. And mainly to ourselves, because doctors and, well, everybody really, we have this tendency to be nice to other people, but we often leave ourselves, in the background. So mood mapping is a technique to manage your moods. And I'd been given the diagnosis bipolar disorder, which was a mood disorder. So the first thing I did was go off to the internet and look up bipolar disorder, and there was very little written about it then. So I looked up mood and mood disorders, and actually nobody really knew very much about it or talked about it. And so I started doing my own research in that area, because I think, you know, it's my problem. I had to do my research. When it's your problem, you have to, nobody cares about it as much as you do. And it's like they say about managing your money. You're the only person who really cares about your money, so you have to manage it. And it's the same about ourselves. We have to manage ourselves, because we're the ones that really care about how we feel. And I done some slides which I'm going to try and share on the screen now. Anything might happen. We'll have this might be.
There you go.
Yeah,
got it.
On there.
Yeah.
So, right, play from the start. Okay. Here we are. Talk, first slide, talk by me. And the purpose of benefits of mood mapping, it really is to get a better understanding of yourself and others, because what's true for you is actually, I've found, also true for other people. And also to gain some self-awareness so that we're better able to manage ourselves in different situations. And if we're managing ourselves, then we can relate to other people better and help them manage themselves as well. So it's not just in any, for instance, I mean, this is a problem, I think, with webinars, because we're not in the same room. So I can't feel how you feel. And I'm just having to take it from a few pictures on the screen. But when we're in the same room with someone, we can feel how others feel, and they reflect our feelings and we reflect theirs. So if you're in control of who you are, it helps other people be in control of who they are.
That's true.
And my background in neuroscience has actually proved peculiarly useful. When I was doing neurosurgery, I'm thinking, this is not a transferable skill. You know, you can only do this in a neurosurgical theatre with a neurosurgical team, and it really isn't going to go. But actually what I did learn from it was an understanding of how the brain works, because when you're operating on the brain and you've got patients in the wards and everything, you actually, you know, you can see what's going on inside their heads from a physical, functional, structural point of view through CT scans and MRI scans. When you do surgery, you know what you've done. And so you get a very material appreciation of the brain, as opposed to, you know, creatures of infinite potential, etc. with the like, you know, it's a much more practical approach. And essentially, we define our experiences in three ways. And I think this is quite useful, and this is quite a useful distinction to develop. Because we use a large number of words to describe our experiences, but as far as the brain's concerned, these experiences are happening at three levels. At the highest level in the cortex. Now, if you imagine the brain like a cabbage, or cauliflower, the little floretty bits on the outside that are all kind of wrinkly, that's like the surface of the brain. You then get into the middle, the stalks of the cauliflower, and that's the middle level. And then we look at the basic level, which is that big stalk that goes down towards the root with a few leaves on, yeah? Oh, sorry, yeah. Yes, just a question from, yeah?
Did you change the slide? Because I'm still seeing the levels, 3 levels of understanding.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, I was just, yeah. I
think the brain picture is the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, so we have these 3 levels, and what I was trying to say at that point, really, before I got carried away with my cabbage, was that they relate to different structures in the brain. And we use 3 different words to help distinguish between the different types of words to distinguish between these 3 different areas. And the thoughts and attitudes, and we tend to use words like troubled or curious these are very high level words. And they're the highest, come from the highest level of the function of the brain, which is the bit on the outside. But when you move into words like anxious, angry, loving, we're starting to move down into much more primal words, which describe the middle level of the brain, where emotions come from, in the middle level. And then deep down to that, in the sort of engine room of the brain, are the mood words. And that's where you get words like overwhelmed, depressed, exhausted. And sometimes you wake up and you can conquer the world, and that's active. And calm. Indifferent, for example, is actually quite a high level word. But so that we do feel things that are different level, but we often don't make those distinctions. So we'll go back to the cabbage, and this is a brain, and it's in George Bush, just to see how it fits inside the head. So he does have a brain, because I've got the picture. And the cortex, that's the bit on the outside. These are the florets of the cauliflower. And this is where you get the words, actions, learning. These are the things that make us humans. Primates have got big cortices as well, cortex outside layers, but other mammals less so. The limbic system, this is where all the emotions come from, hormones come from there, and these are more primal feelings of fear, anger, pain, pleasure, love comes down from there. And then deep in the engine room is the moods and the brainstem, and I think it's because it's so deep in the brain that it doesn't get talked about so much. But this is really, mood is the most critical thing. Gives you energy, gives you well-being, gives you blood pressure, life support, long-term stress, impacts on the brain stem. So you don't need to know all of that per se, but it's to give an appreciation that what we're talking about with moods are the deepest structures of the brain, and they're really so basic. It amazes me that mood mapping was the first real study of moods in the brain. And these are mood pictures, and how do you feel, and the bottom left one, very depressed. And I think a lot of us are finding we're getting quite depressed, I think, in the lockdown, because we're used to having comfort from others and going to see our friends and touching them and hugging them, and we've been told we can't do that. Particularly, I think it must be difficult for people living on their own, because we're such a social species that it's very difficult to hug yourself, but it's always a good try, because everybody feels better if they give themselves a hug. It does work. Or you can give yourself a pat on the back if you want, when you've done something good. But that's the kind of physical appreciation we get from other people, but we'll be lacking at the moment. We're also not very good at telling other people how we feel. And it's the first lie of the day. How are you? Oh, I'm fine, when we're not. So what makes a mood? And it, as I say, it comes from this very deep, primitive part of the brain. It's not primitive in the sense that it's the most sophisticated part of the brain, because it keeps us going. But it's also the one that we've got least access to. And mood is part of two things, really: how good you feel and how much energy you have. And when I was looking into self-management, I used to diary every day, a whole page, 1 or 2 pages of a great big A4 diary I had. And I used to document how I felt, how much money I spent, whether I made jokes, whether I was getting on with people, all sorts of details. And actually, having done this for sort of some 3-4 years even, I realized that what made the day good or bad depended on how good or bad I felt and how much energy I had. And the pictures here are Mr. Caterpillar, who's eaten lots of good, healthy vegetables, and he's quite big, really, even for a caterpillar. And the fight and flight, which is my abstract representation of 2 boxes and an eagle, a fight and flight reaction. If people know that from panic attacks, sympathetic nervous system, and it's what gives you the energy in an emergency to get off and going. And when you feel your heart beating a bit faster, if you've got an important event coming on, that's your flight and fight system kicking in. So mood has two parts: how much energy you have, whether it's low or high. And these are the scales we'll put in on the mood map. If you've got high energy, you're buzzing, you can do anything you like. And if you've got low energy, well, the ultimate state of low energy is, of course, when you're in your coffin, but sleep's a very low energy state, or most of the time. And on the whole, if you reflect in yourself, you can work out how much energy you've got. And it takes a little bit of practice to work out. And mood mapping is very much in the moment. It's how much energy have you got now, because moods do change, like emotions change. Thoughts change, we get distracted, we start doing other things. But equally, moods change, but change much more gradually. Because generally, if you wake up in the morning in a good mood, it will last at least some of the day, most of the day, unless something really bad happens, and you can cultivate the good mood. Or if you wake up in a bad mood, it can be difficult to shift. And there is play. Thinking, if you think negatively, you can cause yourself to feel bad emotions. If, for example, you continually ruminate on someone you don't like, you're going to feel quite angry with them or over something bad that's happened. And then sooner or later, however good your mood was in the morning, it's going to start to get bad by the end of the day. And equally, if you're in a good mood, you think, that person who really annoyed me yesterday, well, actually, sun's shining today, I feel better. Maybe it's not so important. So there's an up and down between these three levels. So they do affect each other. And certainly, if you think positive thoughts, you can improve your energy. And if equally, you feel loving emotions, and again, you can improve things. Well-being. I put this on the horizontal axis, and on the left is negative, and on the right is positive. And that can generally, if you're feeling negative, it's really, that's the type. The left side of the quadrants is when you're in survival mode. This is really, it's all very well learning about mood mapping, but I'm just interested in getting through the next hour, through the next day. And that's when our well-being is down, when we're just trying to survive hour to hour, day to day. But when our well-being is positive, that's when we can plan for the future, think, well, when the lockdown's over, I will do my job differently. I'm going to look for a job in this area, not that area. I'm going to look at what I've learned from lockdown. I'm going to be nice to my neighbours. I'm going to be kind to people in a way that maybe I wasn't. And maybe I won't take, maybe I won't fly as often as I used to. I'll keep away from aeroplanes because, I don't know, I love this plane-free skies. I think they're absolutely beautiful. We've had some wonderful weather, I think. So, there's good and bad with everything. And nature's recovering. So it's like, how can we keep the positives as opposed to the negatives? So when you combine the two aspects of your mood, that is your energy level and how good or bad you feel, you can put them on a cross like this. And that gives you 4 quarters. And those 4 quarters form the 4 basic moods. So if you're high energy and you're feeling positive, you're fit for anything. You can get off action stations, conquer the world. Nothing's too much to cope with, nothing is too difficult, and you can get on, plan, take action, etc. If equally, you can be positive and have a low energy, which is calm. And that's the reflective state, the peaceful state where you go when you meditate, reading, listening to music. All of these can produce this beautiful state of calm. And we need calm because although action, at least on the surface, is more fun, calm, we need that to rest and recover, because that's where we can consider more of what we're doing, where we want to go, and we can learn things, we can concentrate. And I did some courses for teachers, and it's interesting actually, because teachers tend to kind of want their children happy and positive, but actually you learn better when you're a little bit calmer. So the good teachers and the ones to aspire to are the ones who can manage the energy of their pupils. So when they want them to learn things, they make them calm. When they want to wake them up, they give them something that wakes them up, action, and some classes now I know get children to sort of stand up, do some exercises at the desk. If you move around a little bit, raises people's energy. And then equally, if you want people to calm down, they settle down. And sometimes when I'm doing workshops and I get people just to stand up and shake up and move around a bit, if I think, oh God, this is getting a bit quiet, let's have some fun. You can get people to do exercises and things. And all of that's on the positive side of the scale. And that's a great place to be. And certainly, I'm not saying all stress and exhaustion is unhealthy, but we want to try and spend most of our time on that right side, where we've got resources, where we can plan for the future and where we can make the most of life. So we'll also look at how to deal with stress and exhaustion, but that's where you're really in survival mode. Now, stress isn't all bad, because stress where you overcome a great challenge, you're left with better confidence, improved experience. There's lots of things you can learn from a stressful experience. But it's when stress goes on day after day that it gets quite difficult. And it takes a toll on the body as well, because we have stress hormones and the cortisol, and these are steroids. And whether or not people if you're constantly under stress, you're constantly putting out steroids, and those again in the long term, although they give you a short-term boost, will in the long term lead to things like diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of medical conditions if we don't manage our stress. So when you're young, it's great. Stress can be quite fun. You can, do things you'd never normally do. But longer term, it takes its toll. And again, exhaustion can be quite positive when you've done everything you can and you've given a race or a task or something, everything. Collapse at the end of the day, exhausted but triumphant, and you've done it, and that's fine. You can move out of exhaustion. But I think if life's difficult for people, you can enter that awful spiral of you're exhausted, you get a bit of energy, you go into stress, which is this, oh my God, I'm worrying about my problems now. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And then you worry about them so much, and then you end up exhausted, only to wake up the next morning stressed again. And it's a difficult, I think the first thing about getting out of that loop is realizing that's where you are and that's what's going on. And if you're, and we'll talk a little, we'll come back to some strategies for dealing with these different moods. But at the moment, what I really want to do is just to get across an understanding of what the moods are. And I sometimes do this with kiddies, and it's great fun. Little kiddies of about, 6 to 10 sometimes. I think I'm just a cheap babysitter. Parents say, oh, look after little Johnny or whatever. And we play tigers. And so we have 4 tigers that they do. They do the calm tiger, like action tiger, stress tiger, and the exhausted tiger. So we might go out in the garden or whatever, and they would run around the garden. And then I'd pretend to be a big wolf chasing the tigers, and then they'd get tired and they'd be exhausted, and then we'd play sleeping tigers, which is when I'd persuade them to lie down and maybe have a bit of a rest. But children are very good at playing these moods, and anyway, so that's just ways I like to pass my time. But it's a good game. Children understand this very easily. It comes very naturally to them. But I think what happens over time is that we're not allowed to be stressed, or we're not allowed to be positive. Social dictates tell us how we should feel so much of the time rather than how we actually feel. Right. Okay, measuring mood. So, that's the next slide. So, one of the keys about mood mapping is that it provides a more objective measure of how you feel. Because I think it's easy to think, oh God, I had a bad day yesterday. And I had a bad day the day before. And the one before that was very good. But actually, if you can score it as accurately as you can, and this is not easy, and you have to get used to learning to score, because it's not quite, we don't normally score. We tend to use words and things to score. We tend to talk about words, but words are very, they're very not specific. And so you can have different words mean different things to different people, and depending on the context they mean. So essentially with mood mapping, the point about measuring your mood is giving it a figure. And the more you do it, the more consistent you can get with that figure. And if I was doing these workshops live, we have a great big flip chart on the wall, and everybody comes along and puts a cross where they think their mood is. And the first thing to do is to score how much energy, from -5, where you're just kind of, climbing out of the coffin, to +5, when you're jumping up and down, lifting weights and bouncing off the wall like Tigger. Everybody knows who Tigger is, by the way, because I gave a similar talk to this to some teenagers, and none of them knew Tigger. And I'm thinking, what has happened to society's youth that they don't know Winnie the Pooh and Tigger and Eeyore and things? But apparently, anyway. And they gave me some more up-to-date references, things like Speedy Mario, who's high energy. So I was educated. I had stuff to do that. And from energy, so this is about, I think everybody's energy's gone down in this lockdown, because we're not getting the stimulation, and we're not doing the things that we did do to keep our energy up. We're not having as many treats in life. Well, some people might be good for, some people might actually be saying, thank God I don't have to face my boss anymore for the next, however many weeks. But on the whole, we're getting less input. So our energy has probably gone down over the last few, I know mine has. And again, well-being, the first few days and weeks for me, with a couple of weeks so, was good, because I thought, I could do with the rest, that's nice. But after a while, I think we're all beginning to kind of cash in our well-being chips a little bit. It's getting harder. And you think, oh God, I want to go to Starbucks, have a coffee with my friend, and you go to Starbucks, and somebody says, what are you doing out? Oh, I'm taking my exercise, and Starbucks is closed, and and there's nobody there. And over time, I think we are so we need to be concentrating on things to improve our well-being, and we'll get to that later. I'll talk about the 5 areas that help manage mood. But in the first instance, it's really to see how good and bad you feel, so that actually you can tell when you're having a good day, because it's down in writing, not just a vague memory. And I think diarying is really important for everyone, really. It helps you examine more about your life and where you're going. It's a good person to talk to yourself when writing a diary. And I still try and write something every day, even if it's just, my to-do list, but just to sort of write down a few thoughts and things. So, and I usually begin the day actually with working out where I am on the mood map. So how much energy have I got woken up with? And quite often we may not wake up with much energy, but as the day gets going, energy levels improve. And then you get towards late afternoon, get a bit stressed. And then by the end of the day, been a good day, you're tired. So you can sort of circle round the mood map, starting in bottom right, moving to top right, moving to top left, and then down to bottom left and waking up bright as a button the next day. So everybody, it'd be worth just having a go at putting yourself on the mood map now, how positive or negative you're feeling. And it's really whether you feel you're surviving or you're thriving. Mm-hmm. And it may be, you know, there's a certain thing about, I've been forced, well, not forced to, but I'm delighted to do, but I've now got no excuses to run this webinar. And because I'm not at work, and I can't say I'm tired because I'm at work. So Marina and Serena have done an excellent job at getting me organised. So I'm very grateful. Thank you. So from that point of view, that's, as I say, is good. It's given me some energy, some motivation to do things. So that's been, and I think we need to find these things. You know, everybody needs a Marina in their life. So this is a mood map, and I just call it, I mean, you call it the mood point or just anything, the little cross. And as I say, if we were all in the room together, I'd be asking everyone to come up and put their cross on a great big mood map scale. So what you do is, hopefully it's obvious from this slide, but score your energy. That's the easiest one to start with. And we've got words. We often use things like excited, happy, energetic, etc. We can use the words, but they're not very precise. And I'll show you later. I've got a mood map where I put the words onto it. But words mean different things to different people. And really what this is a much more objective way of doing things. And then you put a time. You can do this up to 4 times. You know, you can do this every minute of the day if you like, really. But probably 4 times a day is good. That's how I used to do it, and I certainly do it in the mornings. And I probably come back to it maybe midday or at night as well. And you put down how you feel. And when you've been doing it for a little while, it actually gets to be part of you. And you begin to get an innate appreciation of your mood. And that's quite good because it enables you, you know, to think, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. Supposing somebody says, can you do something? You say, oh, I don't really want to. And if you've got a good understanding of your thoughts, your emotions, and your moods, you can work out more easily why you might not want to do that. And from terms of the thoughts, you might think, well, I don't want to do that because it's really boring. But from the point of view of emotions, you might think, I don't want to do that because I hate you. Or you might think, I don't want to do it because I'm really tired. And actually, each of those reasons needs a different solution. Because if you really don't like them, you only start thinking of good qualities about them. Because if they're your boss or whatever, actually, what are they good at? What can you respect in them? Because nobody wants to work, you don't want to do it if you don't. In terms of it's boring, well, what can you find that might be interesting in the task? But if it's your mood, it can be a lot harder. If you're simply exhausted, it might be better to think, well, maybe I need to work on my mood first, and then I can come back to that when I feel I've got more energy or when I'm feeling better. What can I do to give myself more energy and to improve my well-being? So it makes a big difference as to how you manage your thoughts, your behaviors, and yourself on what is causing the difficulties you have. And that's why I think the 3 levels are quite useful. Now, these are some mood words. Again, they're slightly contextual because you might argue that being motivated was actually a thought, an attitude, but equally it needs to be backed up by some energy and positivity. So words are they're not necessarily that specific, but it might be helpful if you wanted to write down those words where you would put those words for you on a mood map, so that you get an idea of where they are for you. So that if you're pleased, and it's quite interesting because again, I get people to do this in workshops, and everybody's map is different. For some people, pleased is quite a low energy, content sort of state. other people's pleased is a very high energy, positive place. Some people actually quite like being sad, surprisingly. It's not that bad to be sad. And I guess maybe they're the kind of people who used to listen to Leonard Cohen. I don't know if anybody, and that kind of music. But again, we sometimes listen to sad music when we're sad or happy, and it makes us feel better. So anyway, we'll find a way of putting the PowerPoint somewhere, or distribute it, or the pictures to you, so that you can do this as well, like when you get home, or with your partner, or with someone else, and see how their map differs from yours. This one's mine. This is one I did. This is one I made earlier. But it just affects me, and I don't think anybody else's will be like that. Okay. And again, as I say, reading people's moods, we have our own mood, but it can be quite hard sometimes to read other people's moods. And sometimes people who come in looking happy, actually, when we do some of the exercises, they're not that happy. And this is my favorite Peanuts cartoon. And he says, "This is my depressed stance. When you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you can do is straighten up and hold your head high, because then you'll start to feel better. If you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you've got to stand like this." And your shoulders shrugged and your head's down.
Good.
So, anyway, yeah. So we'll go into what affects mood, and then we can start, maybe have a discussion, see what people do in these. There's 5 main areas that feed into mood. And I struggle sometimes to give them the right titles, but we all know what they mean. But all of the papers that I've ever read about mental health, mood, in treatments, etc., they all fall into one of these 5 groups. And the most important one, I think, but again, it's quite interesting, because you talk to different people, and different ones of these 5 are important to different people and at different times of your life, and they're in different orders. But for me, it's the one that I call autonomy. And by that, I mean yourself, your creativity, of being true to yourself, of being authentic, who you are really. And your autonomy is who you are in yourself. And it's about your creativity. And again, you need to look after it. We all need me time. And me time's been a bit of an overused phrase. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to turn off my mobile. I feel really embarrassed by that. No, go away, sorry. Anyway, sorry, hopefully that's done it. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it in a bucket of water. In fact, I'll put it in the fish tank if it causes any more trouble. The autonomy, and this is really what makes you feel good, creativity, writing, the me time, as I say, that much abused phrase, because it just sounds really selfish. Writing your diary in your morning, working out what you want to do, where your plans are. And just, for instance, one of the things that I think was very bad for me was I really wanted to be an artist. I didn't actually want to be a doctor, but life doesn't always work out like that. And when I went in my late 20s, before I got ill, I used to draw and sketch. And then I stopped drawing and sketching because I'm thinking, I can't do this. I can't focus on art and medicine. And I went down the medicine route. So I think that it was that lack of self-expression. Perhaps I should have found some way to carry on, perhaps being a bit more artistic, because medicine isn't that creative. But we've all got our thing, whether it's art, drawing, music, all of these things. And it's very important to feed that part of yourself.
Yeah.
And the second thing is relationships. And it matters. This is intimate relationships, social networks, peer groups, colleagues at work. And it matters. We are a social species. We're not like sort of cheaters or, lone wolves. I mean, we're not. We're basically, we're always found in groups. You know, if an anthropologist was to descend from Marx, he'd say, well, the first thing they do is get in a group, and then they start making a noise. And that's the nature of humans. We can't help it. That's just how we are. Not that we don't like to stand out from the crowd, and we don't like to be a bit individual, but we don't like to be too individual. And you think about that in evolutionary terms, of course, because if you were outside the tribe, you were quite likely to be, you know, lunch for a passing saber-toothed tiger or something, you know, because the safety was in the tribe, was in your group. So it really matters to us how we get on with our group, and that's in our DNA. And the third area is what we know, experience and strategies. And this is really that makes you different from somebody who was born and it's what you've learned, really, essentially. And sometimes we have dreadful lives and we learn dreadful lessons. And sometimes we have a dreadful life and we learn good lessons. And it's like, you know, the brothers of the alcoholic father. One says, well, my father was an alcoholic, there's no hope for me. And the other one says, well, I'm never drinking that stuff because look what it does to people. So we, to a certain extent, it's the lessons we take from our own lives. And again, if you go to, you know, you have parents who went to university, then it's likely you'll go to university and you're going to learn skills and, you know, at university and that are useful in the future. Money is a big strategy. And I think, but I think one of the things is we're often frightened of money. But money is basically a skill. Now, it's not a skill I have or else I'd be rich and famous, but I'm not. So I'm not claiming any financial skills. But I do know it's a skill. It's tinged with a lot of emotion, but it basically money management can be learnt, and it takes discipline to apply it. So this is experience and strategies. I've done workshops on mood mapping and money, and I really felt a bit hypocritical thinking I should be a millionaire to teach this class, but it's like, you know, do what I say, not what I do. So that's really important to mood and well-being, because you learn strategies, and the book Mood Mapping teaches you strategies to get out of different moods and change things, and it's all skills that you can learn. The fourth area is health, and that's fundamental, because if you feel ill, it's very difficult to be energetic and to have a positive view of life. We all know what we need to do to be healthy. We need to exercise, to eat a healthy diet, and to rest, but it's not always easy to do that. And the final one is environment. So I'm not trying to preach, you know, everybody should eat a healthy diet. I'm just saying we need to aspire to a healthy diet and healthy lifestyle. And then environment, which is our surroundings. And this is really important, because I think lots of people have probably got quite fed up with the four walls of their house, flat, room, bedroom. And to a certain extent, it's like, what can you do to improve that? Because it's a good time to tidy a room in that sense, and I've tidied mine several times and it's still, you know, so I have done that. But also environment and getting out again for the hours exercise. We've had some beautiful sunny days, clear skies, wonderful. But also internal organisation and sorting out, you know, where the books are, how do I think about this, and finding ways of organising your thinking. And I even use this five areas to start organising my thinking, because things either fall into one of the 5 groups. They're either to do with my relationships, my environment, you know, must fix the shelves that are falling down is in the environment, need to learn how to speak French or whatever is experience and strategy. So you can use it as a framework in some ways for organising mind. And I put it on a key star, and it's not a unique sort of thing, but you can score these areas out of 5. 5 is as good as possible, and 0 is as bad as it gets. So you can work out your best areas. And then the next thing is to ask yourself the question, what has to happen to make them a 5? And that's a really important question. So, oh gosh, hang on a minute. I wanted to go back there. So what do you have to do to make those areas of 5? And we'll go, so I'm going, oh, hang on, here we are, back. And we've got, I think, 10 minutes or so left. Is that right? And so what it is, in terms of one's mood, there's the immediate things that one can do, and then there's longer term strategies. And I've got the book, Mood Mapping, and you can still, it's gone Kindle, and you can still buy secondhand copies on, because it was published over 10 years ago, still buy copies on Amazon. And in a sense, when you're feeling your mood is not good, when you're on that left-hand side, it's a matter of thinking, what can I do? And for instance, in relationships, phone a friend is a really good strategy. You know, it's amazing. Don't phone, sometimes people make us feel worse. You know, Aunt Maud sits in the cupboard all day and you feel like death when you finally escape her clutches and can walk out, you know, and you visit Aunt Maud every week. Well, that's not a good relationship. So you need to have at least some friends who cheer you up and make you feel better. And because you don't make anybody else feel better if you don't feel good yourself. And really, everybody's mood is their own responsibility. And I know we kind of like to be nice to everybody, but to a certain extent, we need to look after ourselves as well. And some people just drain our energy, and they're just not good to be around, and don't feel guilty for not being around them, because that is their problem.
Yeah.
And maybe you drain their energy and they think, oh my God, she's coming around again. Leave me alone. Because I had a boyfriend once, but you know, and I thought, oh God, how am I going to get rid of him? He's so boring, is he? And I found out, I did eventually, and I found out later from his mates, do you know, he used to come and moan to us, she's so boring, how can I get rid of her? If only we'd been true to our actual, you know, passions, as it were, we could have put ourselves out of misery a lot sooner. And so phone a friend, talk to friends, make friends. This is really good on the webinars, and I think in some ways we're making, you know, friends in ways we never thought would be possible. And when building networks is fantastic. Health. Now, I'm a great advocate of food. Now, the thing is, there's different types of food. There's good food and bad food. And I think always have some good food around, because I know it's very tempting to go straight for the cookie jar. You know, the coffee, the cookie jar, the Coke, and then the bad 3 C's. So in order to try and persuade myself to be slightly healthier,
Bless you.
Yeah. So what I do is I say I can have the cookie providing I eat at least half an apple first and have a little bit of water. So you don't say no cookie. You just say, I'm going to eat something first. Because food is a pick-me-up. There's no question. You put some energy in your body and it does give you energy. But it's a question of good energy from good food. So you could... yeah, and so rather than just, as I say, dipping straight into the cookie jar and the Coke, and with the Coke, it's a good idea to have a glass of water first, because Coke actually contains a very large quantity of salt. And the reason it contains so much salt and phosphorus is to make you thirsty and drink more Coke. And you think, oh God, I want some more of that sweet tasting liquid, because you don't know it's salty. You have to write to the manufacturers and ask them how much salt they put in it. And then they get a bit cagey. But it's got a very high salt concentration. So actually, that's why people keep drinking it as much as anything. And it's also got sugar in it. So have some water first, then have what's bad for you. If you have something good, quite often you don't always want the bad stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, and at least you're given a breathing space for the willpower to kick in. And you've got some energy in your body as well. In terms of surroundings, I think the commonest one the easiest one for me anyway, is to put on some music.
Yeah.
And just for a few minutes. I mean, I tend to go to classical, because that's just always soothing, and it's just a nice thing. You can work to it. You don't have to pay attention, or you can pay attention. So music, and everybody seems, it's interesting now, I'm sure everybody's noticed this, but I think humans have changed. Now they have white strings coming out of their ears, because you never see anybody without without their earphones in. And when I first got my iPhone, not quite last year, but I think, and I had my earphones on, I suddenly felt normal. I thought, this is fantastic. I'm just like everyone else now. I've got white strings coming out of my ear. But music is wonderful. As you well know, and as I say, it's a very good quick tonic for a mood. And I think we'll see if anybody's got any questions or anything at the moment, but because hopefully you have. But yeah, so it's really a matter of, and lots of people doing these things, but what it's about is getting more awareness of what you're doing. So you know what you're doing, so you can do it and channel and direct your activity more constructively. So that's a very short summary of mood mapping that you can do every day, and should help people just be more aware of how you feel. And we do know strategies that will fit into these areas. And if you write these areas down somewhere and put them on the fridge or something like that, then just catch yourself and maybe look at each of the 5 areas and think, what could I do from those that I already know to make myself feel better? Is there someone I can talk to? Is there something I can go and read, learn stuff? What music would help? The other thing is, I know it seems ridiculously extravagant, but I still buy myself the occasional pound bunch of daffodils from Sainsbury's, and it's wonderful. Flowers make you feel better.
Yeah,
and they don't have to, pound for half a dozen or 8 blooms is not extravagant.
Can I just interrupt a little bit? So can I just interrupt a little bit? We're running out of time, and we are losing people, so we still have 2-3 minutes of stuff that Marina will present. So we would like to open the webinar for questions to Liz.
Can I ask whether we will get a copy of these slides, because they're really good?
I'd love to. Yes, I think we can. Yeah, can we do that?
Yes, we can do that. We are actually recording this, as I mentioned in the email. We're
recording it, and it will be on YouTube.
Yeah,
for everyone to watch. So
Brilliant.
the slides will be on there. Yeah.
And also in our group, please join our group, private Facebook group. It's called Happiness is Easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions, please?
Can I ask a question? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. You're coming through loud and clear.
Sorry. It's relevant because I have a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old, and my 10-month-old just walked into the room at that point.
Oh wow!
Just poking his head around. He's been dragged out again now. Whoops. So, 2 very young children. What would be your kind of, I guess, very quick advice when, with obviously them all day, every day, and they don't have any emotional capacity to understand or read my mood? Obviously, I will try and get more of awareness of my own mood, but what would you say with sort of their ages 2.5 and 10 months old?
Oh, it's the children. I mean, they're like patients, and they're like things that, and they magnify your mood.
Right.
Because they're incredibly good. All small children are born. I mean, I haven't got children or whatever, but from observation, they are incredibly good at reading mood. So if you're stressed, they can make you more stressed. in ways you could never imagine. So in a sense, what I'd say is step back and look at how you feel, because they're actually probably, I mean, you see this in teachers in the classroom.
I'm a teacher as well.
Oh, God. Okay. The pupils reflect your mood back. It's like having a giant mirror.
Yeah.
So it's very, I mean, I think exercise is very good, and it's terribly difficult with small children now. But actually, physical exercise, I think, is always good for kiddies. If you can get them to do something physical. You know, I maybe, I don't know, that, you know, ideally, you know, sort of small trampoline or something, kiddies like that. And that's quite good at consuming energy. I've seen small children bounce up and down on a trampoline for, you know, some time. It's quite a good, you know. And then hopefully after about 6 hours, they're a little bit tired, maybe. So I think it's like really just seeing them as giant mirrors, which doesn't really help, but it's like they get their cues from you. Patients are the same, you know, in surgery. If I'm down, my patients are totally depressed. If I go in there on top of the moon, well, they're all behaving themselves. And it seems to be a key human characteristic. And I really, you know, I think it's a heck of a job, and I'm really, you know, I think you're doing, you know, it's amazing. I mean, I think it is so difficult, and I think, you know, that it's probably that, you know, mothers of small, and fathers too, of small children are probably suffering more than anybody in this, in just general suffrage, because it, you know, it's not just your life, it's their lives as well. So I really admire, you know, I think amazing.
That's nice, thank you. It's just nice to take a step back sometimes and remember that that's exactly what it is. They are giant mirrors. That's exactly how I feel. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it doesn't make it any easier.
No, but
they're worse than that. Do you remember? I probably read it in the fairgrounds. You used to go around and find distorting mirrors. Yeah, that kind of made you look sort of fat and everything. You know, me, because I remember them. But yeah, okay. So there, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We will thank you, Liz, for that. We will take one more question.
Could I ask something?
Sure,
quickly?
Caroline.
Okay, yes, thank you. Just wanted to ask what you think about the situation I've got at the moment is chronic fatigue, and I'm just wondering, the mood situation, obviously that has a bearing on it, I think, to some extent, but I don't know that it does completely. So I'm just wondering if you've looked into that side of things at all in your experience.
First of all, I first of all it was empathetic, because doctors are just awful with chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
They are probably, you know, a nightmare. And I do some work with tribunals and benefits, and really I've heard people's stories, and I am actually, you know, I empathise with you, and it's hard and it's real. And the problem is almost like the less you do, the less you can do. And it is difficult, because I think everything does get magnified when we're told we can't go out, etc. I think you just have to look after yourself as much as you can and appreciate that this is a real difficulty.
Yeah.
And not beat yourself up.
I mean, currently there's a GET graded exercise therapy which is recommended via CBT, and I've been on a CBT course specifically for chronic fatigue, and I think the primary thing that, although they're looking into all the scientific research, and it's changing with different results coming through, NHS particularly needs to update itself, I think, quite a bit. I think sometimes I think it's psychological. Sometimes I think you've got to tell yourself, I'm going to do more than I did yesterday, and that's the balance of, trying psychologically to tell yourself that you're able to do whatever you want to do until the point comes where you physically can't do it anymore.
I think that's right. You've got to kind of do what you can within, and know yourself. I think it's not a problem. Well, it is positive thinking helps because that goes down to the emotions and the mood. But I think it's as much as anything to do with mood. It is much, it's how good and bad you feel, and it's your energy level. And I think to a certain extent, we're almost looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I think you have to do what helps.
Yeah, of course.
And it's very individual, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What works for one person isn't going to work for you, and there's nothing worse than somebody saying, oh, why don't you do this?
Mm-hmm.
You think, I've tried it last year, and people do kind of push things. So it is difficult. And, I think we have to be much more accepting of it, of real, and really look for the things that might be we can change.
Sure. Yeah.
So I will share with you my personal experience. I have suffered from extreme fatigue for a few years now, for 5 years now. I went to see a neurologist, and then, it's a long story, but I will share with you 2 things that worked. 5 minutes exercise in the morning, but you have to be regular, just 5 minutes. I will share with you one exercise routine that I do. Just 5 minutes, it keeps me energized the whole day, and I can wake up with full of energy next morning. So it never happened. I tried so many things, but it never happened before. This really works. Just 5 minute exercise. And then you are not, you don't think to yourself, oh, I have to do 1 hour exercise. I have to go for a walk or do this. It's too, too much for me. And then you don't do anything. If you do 5 minutes before breakfast and try this, it might help. And another thing is, I'm not, this is not a sponsored video. I'm just sharing it for you only. This is what worked for me. This is a protein powder, and I tried so many things, so many protein powders, and this is the one that I import from America. And this one is fish collagen. This one worked for me before in the evening. So
that's good for the skin as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good for skin and hair as well. I imported. I've been using it for 3-4 years now. This is the only thing. I tried few other brands from UK, but they didn't work for me.
Okay, I'll look into that then. Thank you.
Try, you need to try, start a lot of things, and you never know which one will work for you.
True.
And somebody will work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying coenzyme Q10 and vitamin D and all the multivitamins. I'm very, very hot on health, eating healthily and everything, and I will try anything basically.
Try this, but it has to, I can share with you the website as well. You have to import it from America. You can't get it from here, from Amazon. They don't have it here. I can share with you the link later on.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marina, do you want to conclude, please?
Great. Okay. Well, look, thank you so much, Dr. Liz, for a fantastic and very informative session. It was really brilliant. So yeah, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions we've got time for, but if anybody has any more questions, you can put them in the chat box and I'll pick them up before we finish completely, but we're pretty much finished now. So just wanted to just to summarize then. So we learned about mood mapping, and we learned about how we can alter our moods just by finding out what, just by mapping them really. And she suggested 4 times a day, but it could just be once or twice a day. And it sounds like you go on a journey into your self-awareness, which takes you into a lot more control over your moods. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Liz. And also the 5 environmental factors were really interesting. So if your mood is down or is depressed a little bit, then you can look at those environmental factors and work out, okay, well, how can I take those to, sorry, not environmental factors, those 5 factors that affect our moods primarily, and then you can look at those. Yeah, so no, it was really, really clear and so simple. It's like you wouldn't think it could make such a difference but obviously it's over time, over a period of time, the effect builds up, and you just, I mean, I've been studying self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and I've been teaching that, and it's incredible how just finding out about how, you know, your own self and how you work as a person really takes you on a journey. There's a fascinating discovery. You know, we think we know ourselves, and when you actually start to look into it and start to do it, you know, do something like this, you realize how little you really know. And so, yeah, it's brilliant. So thank you so much. So yes, I just wanted to let you know, so we've got a few things, really exciting things coming up. So firstly, in May, Dr. Liz will be presenting an exciting webinar on mood mapping and dating. So finding Mr. or Miss Right. So, which is really exciting. I can't wait for that. So that will be, we're charging £60 for tickets. However, sorry, £75, but today we're giving a £50 discount, 50% discount, down to £35. And it's going to be a 2-week, 2-part webinar series. So it's and that's, so keep that posted. We'll keep you posted about that if you join our Facebook group, which is called Happiness is Easy. It's a private Facebook group, and we will keep you posted about when that is. You can also put a message on the meetup group if you came through the meetup group. And then also we will be presenting another 2-week webinar program on emotional intelligence, which is going to be two separate webinars. The first one on emotional intelligence and communication and relationships, and the second one on emotional intelligence and career and business success, and like the return on investment of emotional intelligence. So, you know, this is a really exciting area. Emotional intelligence is something that I would say is absolutely fundamental to kind of anything you want to do, really. Is emotional intelligence is so relevant at all times. So finally, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels for some more fantastic content on happiness, overcoming difficult moods and feelings, overcoming stress, improving your emotional intelligence. So there's Neurobalance Academy. If you just put in the search box in YouTube, Neurobalance Academy, you will come up with that channel. And there's quite a few videos on there. And then there's, if you put in Lead Yourself to Happiness in the search box, you'll see my channel as well, which is Lead Yourself to Happiness. Liz, Dr. Liz, do you have what's your channel called on YouTube?
Well, I've got 2 websites actually. I've got drlizmiller.com and moodmapping.com, and I have to confess neither are particularly up to date at the moment, but I think at the very least I could probably get the slides up on one of those.
Brilliant, thank you. So, and this video of this session will be on those as well, on those channels. So, you know, thank you so much for coming. There's lots of other content. There's more content coming, so please subscribe, join our Facebook group, and you know, thank you so much for coming. And obviously, we'll be doing more sessions, free sessions, and these other sessions as well, very soon.